the Overwater Player-to-Player interview series. It's been a few weeks since we've done one of these, but today we are back and our guest is Mr. Phil Mann. Many of you will know Phil from his work with Scott's Bass Lessons and his own teaching platform With Bass in Mind. He's also played live with artists like the Drifters, Van Morrison and Albert Lee, to name just three. In the interview, we covered Phil's early beginnings as a bass player right up to what he's up to in 2024, his relationship with Overwater and how that's developed over the years, and some great war stories about a time where it all went a little bit wrong on stage and how he got through it and came out the other side. Enjoy the chat and we'll speak to you soon. We're not messing about today, mate. We're not messing about. I know you're a busy boy. Okay, where did it all start for you, Phil? Early context, education, early influences.
Wow. Complete and utter jealousy. I wasn't a musician at all at school. I was a runner. I was a good runner as well. Used to have the track record for 400 meters and run for the borough and all sorts of stuff, county running. And then just all my mates got distracted when I got to their teenage years. Everyone was just basically hanging out, playing guitar, and I was just completely segregated. I lost all my friends literally in one summer. I was doing all my A levels to be a sports physiotherapist, and all of a sudden, I just kind of that classic turned around and went, "Where is everybody?" And they were all hanging out in the studio, learning to play guitar, playing rock songs and stuff like that. We had two prolific bands at secondary school, like a lot of people do. One of them you will know because there's another Overwater in Dorsey, but Scouting for Girls. My very first band was Scouting for Girls, but not directly as what they are today. But Greg and Roy, who were the main two guys from that, who work with Sandy Bills, who's also an Overwater guy. They were in my school, in classes, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, all my friends were just becoming musicians, and I was just completely jealous. I wish there was a lovelier way of saying it, but there isn't. I'll just be honest and transparent. So I used to go hang out, and then one day I was like, "What's that?" And I can still remember it was an Aria Pro MAB 20. It was owned by Dean Birch. I'm sorry, Dean, if you're watching this now, but when you weren't at the studio, I picked up your bass and had a play. And in that was between the first and second year of my A levels. And I went home and I said to my mum, "I'm going to drop out of school." And once she'd finished throwing every piece of porcelain she could get at me, I just completely changed my whole direction in life. I stopped with all the sports. I stopped with the the procrastinating about what university I was going. I was supposed to be going to Westminster University, and then just dropped out of school. Worked for 16 months. Did sort of 5 part-time jobs. I was everything from a baker to a florist, to earn the money to go to music college. A lot of people, professionals, it's a horrible umbrella to say, but people that should we say have a career in music, they tend to start very young and it's with them all their lives. I wasn't. I came to the platform very late, sort of 17, 18. And as a result, I didn't have any formal background with grades or A levels, GCSEs, that sort of stuff. So colleges wouldn't touch me with a barge pole. I literally had to turn up at the doorstep with a huge sum of money and say, "Please take me." Thankfully, the music industry, specifically education part of it, is very shallow. They took my money and put me on the course, but I did well. And actually got an honours degree within 3 years of playing the bass guitar. So I went from nothing to functional, shall we say, very, very quickly. But yeah, I wish there was a wonderful story I could tell you, but actually it comes from the dark side of life, buddy. Complete jealousy. So that's what got me into it. But it found my path, and I was chasing my tail for a very long time. Didn't know what I wanted to do in life. I have a massive affinity with aviation, so I always thought I'd be a pilot or do something like that. But yeah, ended up playing bass guitar, and here I am, 45, 27 years. Is that based on maths right? 27 years in the industry, so something must have clicked. I love that analogy. What is it? Some people say, some people can sit at a piano and they can't play a tune. Other people can sit at a piano and play Beethoven. I sit in life and everything confuses me, but I get on this and it makes sense. So yeah, thank God the bass was a saviour more than an actual study path.
Brilliant, you found your path. What let's bring it right up to date then. What are your current projects? Obviously we want to talk about With Bass in Mind, but what's keeping you busy in 2024 and going forward?
It's absolutely crazy, actually, Dan. Well, one of the things I always try and make a lesson out of everything. I'm sorry if I beat around the bushes to your answer, but I don't like seminars that don't give positive information to people that are watching. Um, Sustainable careers is one of the biggest things you must always think about as a musician. When I first came out of college, I went straight into the pop stuff. I was doing mime work with. I remember doing an audition for Shania Twain, but I wasn't tall enough. And her bass player in Canada was like this 20-stone black guy that when I put on his outfit, it looked like a 4-year-old kid wearing his dad's shirt. I was just like, I can't do that gig. I had a call to do the Appleton Sisters. I didn't get that. That's the All Saints
Yeah.
because I looked too much like Gareth Gates when I was a kid, and he was quite foremost at the time. So they were like, it's not in our interest. And then I did all the Peter Andre and that sort of stuff as a kid. So this is like when I'm 23, 24, coming out of college. I say coming out of college, I'm 45 and I'm still studying. So coming out of my first degree. Um, and I think what the illusion that the music industry gives you is that that's where you are. But life changes. Life changes massively. In my case, I get a bit grey around the ears. I put on a few pound, and I'm not that pin-up boy. I never was a pin-up boy. I just had a few lucky shots. But Michael Caine said it in his autobiography. Michael Caine said he got a script from Christopher Nolan from the Batman franchise, and he read it, and then Christopher Nolan contacted him and said, Michael, are you up for the film? And he said, thank you so much, Chris, but I think I'm a little bit too old to play Batman. It's a wonderful way of how people perceive themselves, because Chris Nolan then turned around and said, sorry, Michael, I want you to play Alfred, Batman's father. And in Michael Caine's autobiography, he talks about how for the first time he went upstairs, looked in the mirror, and the guy that was looking back at him was no longer the leading man, it was the leading man's father. And the thing that he learned from that process was that, guys, you can't play Batman's father until you're old enough to be Batman's father. In the music industry, there's a lot of weight on how you look, being young, being contemporary. Yeah, but have you ever thought that you're too young for a role? And that if you want a sustainable career, you've got to think about what roles are going to open up to you at different periods of your life. When I was a teenager, it was all pop acts. I bought myself a synth bass and played bass. And in my 30s, I went on to upright because my gigs changed. I was an academic I still am an academic, but I was a university lecturer for 9 years. I then went over to the States. And every sector of my career has been a reflection of my age. Um, at one point in my year, I remember going on stage, doing the London clubs and stuff like that, and going to myself, I'm too old for this now. I was looking down and I was seeing people in the audience which were young enough to be my daughter or my son. And I was just like, I wouldn't want to be watching my dad. So there's nothing wrong with that. And if you've got a career, good luck and keep pushing it. Do you know what I mean? At the end of the day, it's about sustainability. But I made a conscious effort to push myself into theatre. And I was just like, right, this is the wrong platform for me now. I've got to this point in my life. I now need to evolve and do this. And I literally remember the summer, it must have been about 2017, where I literally went, that's it, no more pub gigs, no more club gigs, unless it's theatre, TV, stuff like that. I'm not interested. And that's not me being pretentious. That's me directing my career so it's sustainable. And that's happened in every single sector. There's a reason why last year I did the 70th anniversary of the Drifters, full tour. Very, very proud, incredibly proud to do that gig. And I've continued with it this year. But the average age of the audience is in their 60s. The Drifters are by no means a young band. You know, they've been around since 1953. So this now looks in the right idiom. Whereas if I went on stage with a bunch of kids that were doing Dua Lipa covers and stuff like that, I might look a bit like a fish out of water. So that way of kind of shaping my career, that's been everywhere. This year, with Bass in Mind, has grown massively. I don't know if the people are aware, but I used to teach for Scots bass lessons right up until the lockdown, the pandemic. And then I went my own way. I set up with Bass in Mind. And with Bass in Mind as a brand, it's so much more than just teaching online. I have a book series. The book series, the fourth episode edition,
Yeah,
the
that's
fourth
the one.
edition of that franchise comes out next month. So Chord Tone Concepts Volume 4 will come out. And that's the end of that. Then I go on to video lessons and to try and get some sort of perpetual income through passive income. So we have the books. We've got the signature basses from Overwater. This is number one. This is actually 001. This was the prototype, aka Marvin. All my basses are named after Looney Tunes characters. But this was put together from bits. It's like, if any Americans watch this, they won't understand this quote, but it's like Trigger's broom. Trigger was a
That's
character in
very
Only
niche.
Fools and Horses that had one broom and it had 12 heads and six, handles. It's not the same
Mhm.
broom. This thing's had different pickups, different bridges, different electronics, different tuners. It was a prototype. But so we got the bass, we've got the books, we do the lessons, we're doing the recorded lessons, which will be available on Teachable. Um, and then we've just this second launched our first product. Let's look. There it is. And you can see the brand in there. It's on the bottom. This is a Valve DI box made by Susi FX, and it's the With Bass in Mind edition of the Finally. So this is like if you're into Nobles and Readies and that sort of stuff, that's that. But a 9-volt version of it, which can sit on the end of your power board, on your pedal board. Which so anybody that is aware of the drawbacks of things like Nobles and stuff is they're big chunky bits of kit need different power supplies and stuff like that. So we've developed a new bit of kit to help that out. So yeah, there's a lot of things going on. So this year, the With Bass in Mind has grown exponentially, hugely amounts. 4 books, basses, little me doing all my lessons, recording lessons are coming, and then the studio, which is where you're in now. This is the 9-volt studios. We've had some massive things. We had our first 2 number one hits last year with Lorne Riley. He did magnificently. He's a country music guy recording over on Music Row. He's Canadian. And he had That's All She Wrote and Whiskey Don't Lie, which were 2 massive hits last year. So we've done really good. So we do all the recording in house. It's kind of like that's the only way I can say it, a brand, isn't it? Books, pedal, basses, tuition, and then I do all the live stuff as well. I think one of the differences I hope with me is that I am a working musician. Music comes first. I'm not a content provider. Some people always go, "Why are you not doing reviews? And where's the other lessons and stuff on the internet?" Well, last year I did 241 shows. I tried to make sure I got my facts right before I came online. I got a widget with things written on it there. But yeah, I did 241 shows last year. Between myself and my wife, we did over 500. So music comes first as a performance. So yeah, it's everything's happening. So yeah, new book and the new teaching stuff. There is some other things, some very very big things that I can't announce, I'm afraid.
Ooh.
And But as if that wasn't big enough. But there is one specific artist which probably be the biggest of my career. And if it comes off, I'll be a very proud man.
Okay, we'll keep an eye out for that. That's exciting. And a little teaser for everybody.
Yeah. Afraid I can't. It's not confirmed, so we can talk about everything else that if you want to, from Albert Lee to Van Morrison and the
Yeah.
Drifters and Leo Sayer and stuff like that. But I can't talk about the new one just yet. But let's
Well,
cross everything.
I've had a rule for a long time that until I've seen the plane tickets, I'm not going to talk about it. So yeah.
Oh, mate, I've been cancelled literally in rehearsals before. I think we spoke earlier on. Did I mention the Shania Twain thing?
Yeah.
So I've got a brain like a goldfish. But I was booked back in the day. This was about 2002. It was the follow-up single to "Man, I Feel Like a Woman," and it was Shania was doing this very peculiar thing where she was wearing like American hockey outfits, but it was all silver and a bit space age. It was a bit wacky. I think the Canadians get it, but I don't. And she came over to the UK, and it was I think it was either the Nokia Green Rooms or it wasn't Top of the Pops. I think that was off the air by then, but it was along those lines. It was one of those Saturday morning TV shows, and I did all the rehearsals and did everything, learned all the songs, got it all ready, and then on the morning of the gig, went down to the dressing rooms And then, yeah, as I mentioned, her bass player was like six. Like, if anyone's watching, I'm vertically challenged. I'm a little short, and this guy's like 6'4" and like 6 stone heavier than me. So I put on his outfit, and it wasn't adjustable. So we're like, yeah, you're not going to be doing. This was the morning of the gig, and they brought in a guy to mime who looked exactly like me, just a lot taller and a few more pounds on him. So yeah, you're talking about, and unless you've got the plane ticket, mate, unless I'm
Yeah.
at sound check, I'm still getting used to being cancelled. So,
Yeah, I was supposed to do one of the Super Bowls in London at Wembley Stadium with Neo, and that was the same thing. I told my mum it was got to a few days out, and then we got the email that actually he's going to bring his own guys over from the States. So yeah, ever since then I've been like, until I'm there, I'm not talking about it.
yeah, but there's a lesson in that as well, and
Yeah.
Terry Gregory, a very long distant memory in my past. He started teaching me in like 1997, showing my age now. And Terry Gregory said the most important thing to remember in the music industry is that if you look forward in your diary will always be empty. You've got to look back in your diary to realize you've had a career. Um, if you're sitting at the beginning of the week, guys, and you open up your diary and you've got no gigs and you've got no work, don't worry about it. It's fine. That's just potential to fill your diary. Because then by Sunday, you could look back in your diary and you go, wow, I had 6 gigs, 20 hours teaching and a session that I played on that wasn't in my diary. The nature of the industry is that things come in last minute. If you speak to anybody that's in, say, film scoring, stuff like that, the soundtracks that you hear, sometimes they are literally recorded the week before premieres.
Yeah.
Just go into Abbey Road, part of the charts, count it off, and it's done. And you should sit down with people like Steve Pearce, or you've already done it with Trevor Barry and stuff like that. But the guys that are
Mm-hmm.
proper readers, um, uh, Lawrence and Nick Walsh and stuff like that, people that are in that circle, um, that that they would tell you, yeah, at the beginning of the week I did nothing. At the end of the week, I played on a massive symphony. So yeah, don't be worried about there not being work. So always look back in your diary to see there's been a career.
Yeah, very good advice. So you holding your first ever Overwater there. I can see your
It's my first signature, not my first
the first. Okay, the first signature. Yeah, very true. The first signature. I can see your latest one behind you. Where did that journey with Chris and Martin, Kirsty, and the whole team up there begin?
Okay. Well, I did Scott Devine actually interviewed me for this a long time ago. This would have been, I've known Scott since I opened for Marcus Miller at the Manchester Bass Day in 2011. So I've known Scott Devine since 2011. Love him dearly. They're all kind of a big family. A little bit dysfunctional because I'm doing my own thing, but still send nothing but love and respect to him. But that side of my exposure, shall we say, on the internet and stuff led to this. But I was with Overwater for a very, very long time. I did a Pat Metheny show back in 2002. And at the same time, by about 2006, 2007, I did a couple of shows where I was on fretless for the whole thing. And in the interview with Scott, I spoke about this as well. But essentially, I had a piece of paper. I played every fretless you can name, from Music Man to Ibanez to Fenders, and everything was like, didn't like the spacing, didn't like the neck, didn't like the pickups, didn't like the body type. I had this list. So I wrote on a piece of paper. I said, right, I was using Spectre basses for a very long time. I had a wonderful long career with Stuart Spectre, and other than Overwater, Spectre have been the instruments that I've always used. And I literally went, okay, I need a through neck, 3-band, high mass bridge, 35-inch, 24 frets. I like 24 fret instruments because it's geometric and it makes sense to my brain. Okay, so it's
Mm-hmm.
OCD maybe, or CDO, alphabetical order. Bad joke. Okay, but who makes this bass? And at the time, there wasn't many. There was Wall, but they were hideously out of my price range. There was Warwick, but they were too heavy for me. Uh, and then there was this company called Overwater. So I had a 2002 Progress, and I used that fretless Progress. It was for about 10 years. It was my main fretless. Um, uh, and then I got 2 fretted versions of it. So I always had Progress 3s. So yeah, but since 2002, it's a very long time I've been with Overwater now. But I think for the first 10 years of that, nobody knew who I was. I was just a jobbing musician, and doing my thing. And it was only when I went into the West End for the very first time. Again, as another Overwater guy there, Ian King, myself and Ian King, we were both depping on this show. It was a Motown show called Dancing in the Street, 2006, April 26th, 2006. First time I went into the West End, and the MD was a guy called Ian Vince Gatt. Bless him soul, he's passed away now. But I remember turning up and he said to me, he said, "Oh, that's a nice bass. Are you going to play it or land it?" And I didn't get it at the time. And then I realized it was because it looked quite modern. It had a few knobs on it and stuff. And I just wanted a P bass. It was a Motown show.
Mm-hmm.
So the Overwater progresses. I went back to Overwater and said, "Can you make me a progress in a jazz body?" Literally, that's it. I want the flat camber. I want it still to be the same neck. I want it to seat the same EQ. Everything about it, just basically put jazz wings on it. And that's what evolved into the Phil Mann signature model. The when we went live with the PM, there had already been two jazz basses before that, where we was refining the design that I'd commissioned for Overwater to buy to produce before we actually went with the signature models. One of the very earliest one of my students, Lazarus, bought off of me. Weighed a ton, and it doesn't really look like this. If you look at this, it looks like a jazz bass, but actually, Dan, if you put this next door to a jazz bass, the body shapes are very different. It looks more like a Fender Longhorn because of the balance and the way it's been put together. But I had so many different things. I was doing a lot of flights. If you go on an Airbus A350, 35-inch jazz bass doesn't go into the overhead compartments. So that was the first edition. So I went back and said, right, I need to make another jazz bass with a slightly smaller headstock. Can we make it 34-inch, but through body stringing so that basically it responded. The frequency transfer between neck and body was like a through neck instrument. And on the Overwater, my ones, the neck looks like it finishes there, but the neck actually finishes right back here. You can see the bolts are right back here. So this is a 34-inch jazz reduced headstock. So it's shorter, it's a little bit more stubby, but it's still full size. But it responds more like a through neck instrument. And that was always the hypothesis. That's what we wanted to do. But yeah, basically I didn't want it to look like a progress because I was doing more contemporary jobs which weren't appropriate for that look. And I wanted it to be a little bit shorter, so it went into the Airbuses. In about 2 years, I think I filled a passport, so the size of the neck was quite important to keep getting in the overheads. So yeah, that's when the Jazzes came out. We did this one. This is Marvin. Foghorn is the main 5-string, which everybody knows, with all the inlays and stuff like that. It's got beautiful abalone inlays because I was supposed to be a Kiwi. I was supposed to grow up in Wellington in New Zealand, so hence I put their national stone in the fretboard. But then when I started with this chapter in my career, I started to discover a few things that I had to take into consideration. The first one was in-ear monitoring, and the second one was the people I was working with. The jazz bass is a very sharp tool. It means business. If you play it, it cuts through. Where you might want more of a Motown sound or something, you should need a P bass. So although this is my signature model with Overwater, which has done fabulous, I'm so proud to see so many of these things getting sold all around the world. It's absolutely brilliant. I have got a PJ, which we'll talk about in a minute. That was made specifically for the Drifters. Yeah, there was the first thing that came up was when I started doing stage productions. I was doing a big Whitney Houston world tour, and one of the things that happened is when I was on remote, like digital wireless systems, in-ears and the bass, the EQ that I had in the instrument on a jazz bass had a very narrow Q. Now that's like basically the bandwidth for the guys that don't know. So if I turn the mid up, it's a very specific frequency. And what would happen with the early wireless systems is that you had like a threshold which made it peak. So I was like, oh, the sound's not right. I kept boosting. And then eventually that Q would touch the peak and it would distort my in-ears and it would distort the actual transmitter from my bass. So what I needed was a wider Q, so more like a passive sound, which gave me more frequency, so my signal was warmer in my in ears, um, and also it wouldn't peak. So that was the first thing I had to take into consideration. So I started entertaining passive basses, and I also started to entertain things like high pass and low pass filters in my chain. That was I use a wonderful pedal now from Trickfish that has two variable frequencies, so I can home in that EQ and not distort it in the in-ears. Remember, this is not about the bass. This is just about working with the technology. So the first thing was that. The EQs evolved, hence Trigger's Broom. All my basses use Bartolini throughout. And if you buy the Overwaters, they use a Bartolini type pickup from the factory, and but all Overwater hardware, which is fantastic. I commissioned that, okayed it all because it's absolutely brilliant. This is just my personal preference for my own working environment. But then with the drifters, yeah, I had to go a little bit more contemporary. So we developed a PJ. Now, this is my precision, aka Slowpoke. Slowpoke was Speedy Gonzalez's buddy in Looney Tunes, and he was a drifter. Get it? This is a PJ precision, but it's not. It's the same spec neck as my signature model. It's the same weight. It's the same layout. But we've gone with a Wengi or Wenge, depending on how you look at it, neck and alder body, still through neck, still the deep heel. So all the specifications you'd expect. Bartolini, but you'll see there's a few twists here. The first one is it's a PJ. Reverse position PJ. Now, the point of that being is that on a P bass, your E and the A string generally a little bit boomier, and that's the D and the G string will be at slightly higher resolution, and they pop a little bit the sound. That's because the headstock on Fenders, the D and the G is literally 4 inches longer, so the strings are at a higher tension. So what you do is you do a reverse position. The pickup picks up the D and G string further forward, that's where a warmer part of the string, and the E and the A further back. So you basically get a tighter sound. So it looks like a P bass, but already it's a little bit hot rodded here. Then we put in the J as well. So PJ. Now that was a thing that happened in the end of the 70s. People were putting jazz bass necks onto Fender Precisions. They were putting a jazz pickup into it, high mass bridge. That was the Leo Quinn Badass, and generally changing over to DiMarzio pickups. Which were the white pickup covers that you see a lot. That was a very end of the 70s, early 80s, trying to basically hot rod a precision. So this is a hot rod, but it's been hot rodded. Same bridge, same spacing, same tuners as my signature. But there's a couple of really cool little aspects. The first thing is this: I've got a little kill switch. That allows me to literally switch off the jazz. So it's not a blend, it's a complete kill switch. So it's been taken out of the circuit now, so that is an authentic P. When I flip it back in, it comes back into the circuit. Now, the controls, I hope you can see it at high enough resolution. It's all passive, but these are concentric volumes and tones which you would find on a pre-CBS, pre-1962 to be specific, Fender Jazz Bass, 60 to 62. I had these concentrics, and what you get is you get a volume and a tone control for the front, a volume and a tone control for the back. Now, that means I can set up the volumes like a 80-20, shall we say, specific tone that I want, the correct amount of tonality with the actual polarity of the pots. And then, depending on the song, I can cut out the jazz or bring it back in without adjusting those volumes, because with that, it's more like a ratio as opposed to on and off. You know, you do get different tonalities. That's why those pre-CBS jazz basses, I know it's pre-CBS, but that's why they're quite sought after. That configuration of pickups, you get a very different sound out of them than the volume tone. You can't get it elsewhere. So yeah, they're concentric volumes with the P and the J and switch off. And the reason I wanted that was because, well, the Drifter's career, like we said, is the 70th anniversary last year. So you can be playing these really early Clive McFadder 1950s doo-wop tunes. Then in the 1960s, you can be playing all the sort of Benny King, Johnny Moore hits, you know, Hello Happiness and Stand By Me and stuff like that. But then in the late 70s, it became quite disco and quite R&B. So now I need a bit of bite, and that's the idea of the kill switch. So it's good. So yeah, it was made purposefully, but everything in my career has been purposeful. The equipment I use for the gigs, these are tools. If I need a P bass, I buy a P bass. I'm the musician. This doesn't do anything without me. It's just Overwater tick all the boxes. I've got a wonderful relationship with Chris, Kirsty, and Martin, and they've been in my career for 25 out of 27 years. So everything I've done has always had Overwater, and I'm a creature of habit, but I'm also fiercely loyal. So if I need it, the first thing I would do is go, guys, can you build it for me?
So our final thing then for today is going to be, I want to hear some Philip Mann war stories. A time you were really under pressure on a gig, the MD's shouting at you, the artist is pissed off, your gear's exploding. Can you give us an example of something where the wheels really came off on stage in your career, and how, as a professional, do you get around that, navigate it, and come out the other side, hopefully, with your career intact?
Okay, well, look, if I can, the first thing is I would say if you've got to contemplate about the things you need to do in your career to get you into those situations in the first place. I know everything's circumstantial, but you really do need to think about choices you make and things you do at different times in your life. I think for most of my career, uh, uh, I've had to continually, I think we spoke about this previously, in Able Chit Chat about imposter syndrome. I feel like I've always had to justify who I am, what I'm doing, and to different circles of musicians. Um, Music colleges are a fantastic thing, Dan. When you get there, it's one of the only times you'll ever meet so many like-minded people, and the bulk of your networking happens when you go to music colleges or in that sort of developmental period of your careers. Um, the people that you go to school with, if they're successful, will be in your life your entire music career. Um, I made some big decisions when I was a kid that were detrimental to my career long term. And I think if anybody um, is watching this and they're thinking about a career in music, I'd ask them to not see the wood from the trees and try and make the right decisions, thinking about the people that surround you. When I came back from Florida, I was asked to teach at a number of different places, and the first thing I did was look at the prospectus and find out who else taught at those colleges, because they were the people that were going to surround me in the student, like the green areas and stuff like that. So I was like, no, if I want to be around these, I want to be around these guys because these guys are really active in the industry. Um, that's where I became familiar with people like Zoltan, who we have a mutual respect for. Um, Zoltan's the guy that I should have studied with. I should have gone that direction. I made a mistake. For anyone that doesn't know, and go to the bass lounge, Zoltan's bass lounge, probably one of the finest places of rhythm. I want to say his timing is exquisite. I mean, I listen to that guy and I'm just like, wow. And it's not about his note choice; it's his timing. It's absolutely spectacular. So yeah, kudos first of all to Zoltan. A bit of a fanboy here. But I went to a contemporary music college, and when I came out of it, I was very very serious. I got good, and the people that surrounded me didn't go from that, and I found like I was always belittled, a little bit frowned upon. Oh, you went to that college rather than going to these colleges. Um, so I wish that, in hindsight, I wish I'd gone and made certain decisions differently. I think my place in the music industry might be slightly different, more refined, because the people that surround me now went to the Royal Academy or they went to Goldsmiths or Leeds, and I didn't. And that's nothing to do with the quality of the colleges. Smart ass. It's nothing to do with the quality of the colleges, but it's the people that surround you. You know, I did this. I dig this out before today. This is. I had two scholarships in my career. This is a signed scholarship for Jeff Berlin's Players School of Music. There it is, 2007, a full scholarship, and it remains unsigned by me. I didn't take it. How crazy is that? And the irony is, I ended up teaching at Jeff's college. But there you go. There's the actual scholarship. I was also one of only three people that got a scholarship to go to Berkeley in the whole of Europe. I went over to Ireland when I came out of my first degree. I have 3 degrees in FHEA now, one down from a doctor. And I didn't take that either. And it was all because of finance and all that sort of stuff and poor decisions. So I just think if anybody's going to colleges, most music colleges now will offer very similar experiences, same sort of curriculum. Think about who's on the teaching faculty, what they're doing. They're the people that will surround you as you go forward, and also what you want to do in your career. If you want to be a West End theatre musician, don't go to a contemporary music college. Go to the college where those people are bred, and it might be hard for you to get into, but long term, it'll be one of the best experiences of your life. When I finally got into the environments that I wanted to be in, you find that the guys that can do the job are always really friendly, and they're really great, and they're so lovely and supporting. I got really intimidated once doing a big band, a wonderful big band, and I thought I was out of my depth. And I turned up and I counted it off, and it sounded exactly like the record. It was perfect because the level of the musicianship was so high. It wasn't like I was trying to keep up with them. They actually made my job easier. It's when the musicianship's not as good that you have to work harder to try and fill in the gaps. Unfortunately, the latter happens at every level. Doesn't matter where you are. Famously, I've spoke about this in so many different masterclasses, but I got that wonderful gig where I was very proud. Again, I'm quite a nostalgic guy, and I took the stage with for the 65th anniversary. It was a blue plaque unveiling of Rock Island Line at Decca Studios, and there was a big benefit concert that followed, which was with Leo Sayer and Billy Bragg, Chris Farlow, Van Morrison. All those guys were on that bill, and you think, wow, this is going to be spectacular. It's one of the biggest horror stories of my life. So much so that, bless him, Mo Foster phoned me the next day. We had a mutual friend in the audience who I spoke to after the gig, and said, "Yeah, I won't be doing this gig again." And he straight away told Mo. Mo phoned me the next day. And he said, "Dear boy," I said, "Moby, how you doing?" We were best of friends, spoke all the time, and he goes, "I believe you've joined a very unique fan club now." And I said, "What's that?" He said, "People that have been sacked by Van Morrison." And he said, "Congratulations, I consider myself the chairman of such a gig." Because Mo went on tour with Dr. John, Mick Ronson, Van Morrison, and Mo Foster. What a lineup, man. And they did one gig in Amsterdam. That's on YouTube. You can watch it. And the next day, it was supposed to be a whole European tour. The next day, Van flew back to the States and bailed on the whole tour. Right. And Mo was just left in Amsterdam going, what the hell do I do now? He says, "I've met a few pricks in my time, but Mo is that Van's the full cactus," I believe is the quote. I burn that into my long-term memory. But yeah, I had a frightful time with Van on stage. Equipment failures, and all sort trying to deal with all of his discrepancies. He's quite a troubled man when you get him on a bad day, but then spectacular on a good day. So there's a long, tedious story that's attached to that if you've got time. If not, one of the worst things I've ever done was with all my basses, I have kill switches, active, passive. And that came because Stingrays, they're all active, and if they go dead, they go dead. My nickname, and you won't see my name on a lot of recordings. Like I said, there's a couple of albums of Van Morrison and all the Lorne Riley stuff and things like that. It always says 9 volt. And it's kind of my studio, my workstation is called 9 Volt Studios. And the reason is that I was on stage, a live broadcast, and the 9 volt battery in my bass went dead. I serviced the instrument the night before, forgot to change the battery, no warning, and it went dead. Put my hand up, sorry guys, killed the red light. I opened my kit case and there was no spare. So I was then like, there's probably one inside one of my tuners. Opened up my tuner, yes. Replaced the 9 volt, started again. Unless it's a full battery on a Music Man, it will go dead again. Went 2 songs in, it went dead again. So big lesson there. Live studio broadcast on radio, Decca Studios. What an idiot. And
always change your battery.
Left it, yeah. Check your batteries, guys. Even if you don't need to change it. Because I'm in people's phones as 9 volt, not even Philip Mann, which is ridiculous, but that's the truth. Lorne Riley on a recent radio interview, he actually said, "Oh yeah, we had 9 volt on bass." And I was just like, "You even going to name check me?" They didn't even do that. So yeah. But yeah, Van was a pickle. He was a bit of a rascal to work with.
Which of his tracks did you record on as under 9 volt?
Well, I did 2 albums with Lorne Riley. That's on there. I did a whole album with Albert Lee. That's all 9 volt on there. But there's a load of other stuff where I've done for Music Row in Nashville. I'm a Nashville session musician, Dan. I can say that. I've never been in a studio in my life in Nashville. I do it all from here. But yeah, there's a couple of big country artists that have got me on their recordings, which is just says 9 volt. So yeah, it's all good. I was lucky once I worked with Albert Lee, that whole country circle. You know, he's a Grammy Award-winning guitarist, Emily Harrison, the Everly Brothers, and stuff like that. All of a sudden, those people like, hey, this guy recorded with Albert. Check him out, and I got a few gigs down that avenue, which was it was very very cool. So I seem to be good at that. Seem to be good for that. The country thing. Although I keep putting up content on social media where I'm trying to show off my chops, but I get employed for doing that, which says it all really.
Well, yeah, that's all of us though, isn't it? Everyone knows what we're supposed to do. Thank you so much for your time today, Phil. Really appreciate it, mate. Good luck with everything you've got coming up this year, and we'll all wait with bated breath for that new announcement you dropped in there.
Yeah.
Good to catch up, buddy. I'll speak to you soon.